So we are happy to have with us a politician from the local region of our event. The State Secretary of the Ministry for the Environment, Agriculture and Energy of Saxony-Anhalt, Klaus Rehda, will introduce the topic Sustainability of Polymers, the EU plastic strategy and the circular economy. So please feel free to have a look and listen to his interesting lecture.
Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to welcome you very warmly, and I'm looking forward to give you a small insight and give a welcoming address and present the political point of view, how we, from a political point of view, from the Ministry for Environment, Agriculture and Energy, deal with the whole issue of plastics, sustainability, and the whole question of circular economy. I'm very pleased that we have an international audience present here today. This proves that this topic is acknowledged worldwide and that it's no longer only of national interest, this topic, but that internationally a lot of contacts were established and there is good and close collaboration. Looking at the whole issue, plastics, it's a very broad issue, and in politics, it's a very controversial topic. It is discussed at different levels, and we have to say that a life without plastics is unthinkable. They are omnipresent. However, plastics have a very bad reputation because we found plastic waste in every part of the environment. We have plastic residues as microplastics in the oceans, in our rivers, and that is why politics is asked to do something and to act. Looking at the quantities of plastics, we could state that in 2019 worldwide we had 370 million tons of plastics produced. Extrapolating it to the overall amount of plastic since the beginning of industrialization, we talk about 9 billion tons of plastics produced so far. Out of it, 30% are in use, 9% were recycled, 12% burned, and 79% deposited. So a large amount of plastics is deposited, and we found it in so many places. So that shows there is need to act, and it shows that in future we have to deal more carefully with plastics, and this is part and aim of our political agenda, not only at national level but also at EU level. Here it is about that in the EU industry we want to see more sustainability and a better circular economy. And I think this is in your interest as well. And this is also the underlying idea of this conference, to strive for this closed circular economy. As I said, target of the European Union is to get to a sustainability. That is why in 2018 an EU strategy for plastics, a European strategy for plastics in a circular economy, was issued with clear targets. One target is that by 2030 we want to have a complete recycling capability of all plastics used. Whether this can be realized and how this can be realized, there are several steps, and at the moment we try to implement different ideas. The EU started an action plan in 2020 for circular economy, and this action plan focuses on the questions around plastics, plastics recycling, use of plastics. In this additional action plan, we see a possibility that, especially when it comes to bioplastics, to set definitions, to introduce definitions. because this is one of the main controversial points in the whole bioplastics discussion, that there is a lack of certain definitions. That is why the target of the European Commission is to be transparent and to have a clear discussion and to regulate what plastics can be labeled as biodegradable, compostable, and so on and so forth, and what is the life cycle analysis behind these different kinds of plastics. And I think this is a very important definition in order, as I said, to bring more transparency and clarity in the whole debate. And so the question of material usage and all questions around the issue, what do we understand talking about the different kinds of plastic? So to make that clear, it requires clear definitions. And we should avoid mixtures or confusion in this context. Of course, politics will adapt to the EU strategy, and looking at the current situation, you see that there is a lack of regulations. If we want to use plastics more sustainable, if we want to extend or improve the life cycle, if we want to use bioplastics, we see that at the moment there are no suitable collection systems, for instance. We have a lack of legal regulations and framework, for instance, for separate collection. These are all tasks ahead of us. And here we have to sit down and do our homeworks. We are on the right path. However, there are still a number of open questions, especially those I mentioned in the beginning, namely the definition of these different kinds of plastic. Talking about plastics, and if we want to use sustainable plastic, then of course we face a lot of different tasks. And I think these are also the tasks ahead of you. If you discuss the process, how bioplastics can be used, how bioplastics can be better used in future. And one thing is demanded, that there is a multiple usage of bioplastics and plastics. So that this plastics is used multiply, not only once. If this is not possible, the next step would be recycling, and if possible, holistic recycling. As I said, the EU wants by 2030 100% recycling of plastics. This will be the next step, a necessary one. Furthermore, it is important, if recycle, a multiple usage of the used resources becomes possible. Of course, there are certain processes and technologies, and it is a question of research, development, and it is our target to have a multiple usage of resources applied. The whole discussion is under the headline of the Green Deal. The Green Deal was adopted by the European Union. That's to say that when using plastics, it is tried to minimize the CO2 footprint. And this is the big opportunity for bioplastics, to get a foot in the door, to be better established in the market, because especially in this area, CO2 emission is quite an issue. If you go away from fossil fuels using bio resources, we can minimize or reduce CO2. In this context, biodegradability of bioplastics should become more in the focus of our attention and will be improved. This is another important point which can be. In this context, additives for plastics is also an issue which need to be discussed. Additives making plastics more user-friendly, but also these additives need to be discussed because they may contain material which is harmful for the environment. And in future, additives should also be produced sustainably. So you see, this is a whole range of different tasks ahead of us, ahead of you, from industry, development, when it comes to develop new processes, new fields of applications. And we are aware that this is a huge task. That is why we from politics try our utmost best to support your research, to support you when it comes to establish structures, industrial structures and networks. In central Germany, we have a number of different locations active in this area. Locations and companies which invested, and I'm happy that we have the Rubio network in central Germany where all these initiatives come together, and this is, according to our point of view, it won't work if everyone works individually, but it is important to look beyond the horizon, bundle interests and share knowledge. And it is of utmost importance then to be on the same page. And we from politics, as I said, try our very best to support this development, to support your activities. If it's about to use biologically produced plastics, we should try to avoid competition. Plant-based resources, will they take away necessary fields, and this may harm food production? This is a political discussion, no doubt about it, but as I said, we have to try our very best to avoid competition. I think this whole issue is of utmost importance, necessary if we want to reach the targets set by the European Union. If we want to progress in terms of bioplastics, and when it comes to bioplastics, we see more potential than used so far. That is why development is of utmost importance, trying to find good solutions, acting sustainably, and thus making the development of plastics more efficient, low in CO2, and which helps us in future tackling all these problems. Thus having said, I hope you have an interesting conference. All the best for your projects, and I hope that together we can make it and can realize good projects.
We thank the State Secretary Klaus Rehda for this speech, and I think there were very interesting contributions, as always, in Biopolymers event. So thank you for this political contribution.